The Seahawks won 10 games last season, but they were the only team with double-digit victories that did not punch a ticket to the postseason. Which players hold the key to taking that next step in 2025? We're going to be discussing and debating here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on Blue Friday by my co-host, Nick Lee, and a special thanks to all the 12s out there tuning in, whether you're tuning in from Oakville, Washington, or Forsyth, Montana. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We are drawing closer and closer to the start of training camp, but we've still got a little bit of a gap here. We've got the rest of June and then a good chunk of July, so football still feels like it's so far away, but we promise that it's going to be coming quick, and to lead up to that, we've got our latest Bubble Watch. We'll be discussing and debating 5 pairs of players who very much could be on the roster bubble as we head towards the start of training camp. And then we're going to look at the free agents that are still in the market after Jair Alexander signed with the Ravens. There's still some intriguing players that the Seahawks could potentially add before or during the early stages of training camp. This episode is brought your way by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Now for your lead story here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Only one team in the NFL last season won 10 or more games but didn't get to play in the postseason. And unfortunately for Seahawks fans, it was Mike Macdonald's squad that, due to tiebreakers, lost the NFC West to the Los Angeles Rams. Had to sit at home while the postseason was going on. They believe in the building that they have done what they need to do this offseason to close that gap in the NFC West and finally get back to the playoffs 2 years in a row that they haven't been in the postseason. And with that in mind, Nick, you know, it is list season. It's power ranking season here as we head up to training camp in late July. And we're going to dish out some different rankings over the course of the next few Fridays. But today, power rankings all about the players that hold the key to the Seahawks reaching their ceiling in 2025, which many people in the building believe that's 12, 13 wins, winning the NFC West. Which players, though, are the keys to that? Which ones are going to fuel whether or not this team can reach that full potential in 2025? And Nick, I give you the mic first. Let's break down your power rankings, your 5 biggest keys to the Seahawks playing to their potential this upcoming season.
This is actually a fun exercise, and I do think we have fairly different lists. What I did, I heavily favored some of the more premium positions, or positions I believe you need to be really well built at to win a Super Bowl. So I'll go 5 to 1, because I hate when people do, pet peeve of mine, I hate when like 50 greatest movies of all time and they start with number 1 and count down. That's no fun. I hate that. So I'm going to go 5 to 1.
Well, we're not going to do it that way. You start with number 5.
Okay. So number 5, Byron Murphy, year 2, defensive tackle. First rounder, hoping to build along that interior offensive or interior defensive line. When the Seahawks selected him, I was kind of envisioning something that the Eagles have built, where they're kind of some building blocks towards a Super Bowl contender kind of defensive line with him and Leonard Williams, of course. Didn't quite materialize like that as a rookie. He doesn't quite look like Jalen Carter quite yet. That would be really nice. But if he were to take that next step, maybe not Jalen Carter, that might not be not fair, but, first round disruptive, a bit more in the pass rush, numbers, getting those numbers up and reaching that looking like a first round disruptive interior defensive lineman. I think that will do wonders for what the Seahawks can do on defense. And that kind of rolls into my next 2, which are both corners. And my 4th is Devin Witherspoon. Now, some people are like, well, reaching his ceiling. I mean, me putting Spoon on this list is a compliment to him, because this is me pretty much saying he hasn't reached his ceiling yet. And again, that's a compliment because he's been very good. A couple-time Pro Bowler. Hard to start his career better than that, really. He's an all-pro talent. He's a top 5 cornerback in the NFL talent. And I don't think we've seen the best of Devin Witherspoon yet. And if we do get an all-pro type season from Devin Witherspoon this year, this defense can also be a top 5 unit in the NFL. I think that he is such a linchpin, such a cog in this defense, that if he becomes truly that top 5 pick, if he goes up to that ceiling, we're talking about one of the best defenses in the NFL, and that rolls into my number 3, Riq Woolen. And just for not ranking him ahead of Spoon as far as talent or whatever, it's just the importance of him needing to up his game. If he can summon something similar to his rookie season, pairing that with Spoon possibly taking that next step, we're talking about probably a top 3 cornerback duo in the NFL. And then if you roll into with Byron Murphy improving in year 2, I mean, that gets a really scary defense really fast. So I got the 2 corners there in the middle. And then number 2, this is where I kind of cheat a little bit, Corbin. I'm going my last 2. So number 1 and number 2 are the 2 premium positions. And number 2, left tackle Charles Cross. I kind of like Devin Witherspoon. I'm saying this as a compliment that he hasn't reached his ceiling yet. I think he can reach that Pro Bowl, top 10 pick left tackle that he can be. And boy, if that comes out this year with some of the other changes that the Seahawks have made along the offense, first of all, that's going to make my number 1 pick better, his life better, and that's Sam Darnold. So, spoiler there. So, Charles Cross, if he can live up to that top 10 potential, I'm not saying he needs to be pro Trent Williams, Walter Jones type, but taking that next step from last year where he did look better, and reaching a bit more of that potential as a top 10 pick, that'll just make a lot of the other pieces on offense fall into place. And of course, number 1 is Sam Darnold. The question of the offseason, maybe around the entire NFL, I'd say top 5 questions around the entire league is, who is Sam Darnold? Is Sam Darnold the one that, is he actually having this career renaissance, or was last year smoke and mirrors and a bit of a fluke? This is the year where that question probably will be answered. And if the question is no, that is the new and improved Sam Darnold 2.0. The Seahawks will stand to benefit from that and reach the playoffs with a Sam Darnold rejuvenated.
Yeah, for me, we've got some similar players. We've got some different ones. I've got Riq Woolen at number 5 on my list. And I thought about Devin Witherspoon, but I decided Woolen has been the more inconsistent player over the last 2 years, especially last year. He's been benched briefly each of the last 2 seasons by 2 different coaches. I want to see in his contract year maturation. I want to see consistency. I want to see this very talented, incredibly athletic guy find a way to really elevate that game of his to where every single week you are getting top 5, top 10 caliber cornerback play. We just haven't seen it. There are times where the button seems to turn off a little bit. That cannot happen this year. And you've got a lot of money on the line. If they can get anywhere close to rookie year Riq Woolen with Devin Witherspoon and the other weapons they have in that secondary, this is going to be a no-fly zone. It's going to be a very difficult team for opposing quarterbacks to throw the football against. So I think Woolen is incredibly important. And then I don't want to put pressure on a first-round pick, a rookie, but that's what I'm going to do right now because Laken Tomlinson, let's just be honest, he really struggled last year at the left guard position. Seattle's been playing musical chairs at both guard spots. Gray Zabel needs to come in day 1. He's already established that he's going to be the starter, in my opinion. He's got to come in and he's got to set the tone, play with the physicality and the athleticism that the Seahawks believe he's going to be able to immediately bring to the table. If Gray Zabel is a solid rookie, he doesn't have to be an all-pro right out of the gate. You just need him to be a competent starter. If he is able to do that, that to me tilts things really in the right direction for this offense, especially with all the other new pieces. They have the skill spots. The run game is going to be crucial for this offense to be able to play to its potential. And I think that's really what dictates if Seattle can play as a team to its potential. So I'm going to have Gray Zabel at number 4. At number 3 on my list, I actually have Sam Darnold at number 3. And the big reason why I don't have him at the top of the list, to me, this Seahawks team, I kind of just hinted at this. If they are going to be an 11, 12 plus win team, I don't think the path to doing that is going to be Sam Darnold throwing the football 65 to 70% of the time. They have to be able to run the football effectively. And so, yes, Darnold has big shoes to fill with Geno Smith being gone. A lot of money being thrown at him. You got to prove last year wasn't a fluke, but take some of the pressure off him so that he's not having to deal with putting everything on his shoulders. So I've got him at number 3. And for my last 2, at number 2, I'm going to bring back a player who has just been bogged down by injuries the last couple of years. We don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of training camp because Uchenna Nwosu is coming off knee surgery. It has just been one thing after another. But man, if you could just get a full healthy season from Uchenna Nwosu to go with Boye Mafe, you added Jamarcus Lawrence, Derek Hall had 8 sacks last year. I feel like defensively, Uchenna Nwosu is truly the biggest X factor here, because if you could get anywhere close to 2022, Uchenna Nwosu with the other talent the Seahawks have up front, this defense goes from really good to scary good. And I think he holds a massive key whether this team can get to that 11, 12, 13 win threshold after getting to 10 wins a year ago when he only played in 6 games. They need him to be healthy and productive. And at number 1, speaking of healthy, Abraham Lucas, this was easy for me. The Seahawks last year went 5-2 in the 7 games that Lucas played, and he was much closer to 100%. He'll tell you he still had kind of a flat tire coming off that knee injury, but he was much better last year. He was closer to being 100%. Seattle ran for almost 12 yards more per game in the games he played in. Sacks were down a little bit. They were just a different offense with Abraham Lucas on the field. And again, 5-2 in those 7 games. You have a healthy Abe Lucas going into training camp for the first time in a couple years. I think he still has all pro caliber talent at that right tackle position. If he's healthy, he looks fantastic. That is the guy that is really going to be the one that moves the needle for the Seahawks. If you can keep him healthy for most of the season, then I think that this is an offense that's going to be much better than expected. And the run game is going to be much better with number 72 out there. When we come back, we're going to shift gears to free agency. Jair Alexander signed to the Ravens, but there's still plenty of good players out there available in the market for the Seahawks to consider signing. We're going to be breaking down 3 players apiece that we think would be interesting additions to Seattle's roster heading into training camp. That's coming up next here at a Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA Finals are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in the action. And right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy. Whether it's picking my favorite team in a matchup, go Pacers, let's get it done game 7, or diving into player props for teams still remaining in the hunt. From Tyrese Halliburton nailing clutch jumpers in the closing seconds to Chet Holmgren driving into the lane, spinning and throwing down a thunderous dunk, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Welcome back to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. He is Nick Lee. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. The NFL Draft is way in the rearview mirror, but roster moves and news, they never stop. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Speaking of the fact that the NFL never stops and moves seem to always be happening, Nick, we are now to the time of year. It's a dead zone. You don't have players on the field for the next 5 or 6 weeks. However, that does not mean that roster moves are not going to happen. We've already seen the Seahawks make a couple end-of-the-roster moves since they ended their mini camp, and you still have some really good veterans that are available that, listen, they're biding their time. A lot of these guys, they didn't need OTAs. They didn't need mandatory mini camp, and they're still available. They're going to be looking to latch on with new teams before training camp or in the early stages of camp. And I would say that this is one of the more impressive free agent groups in terms of guys that can come in and help your football team that we've seen in the last few years for it being mid-June. So let's talk free agents that make a lot of sense for the Seahawks. And I know that you've been bummed ever since David Andrews announced his retirement. That was a guy that you were pitching for, but he is no longer playing football. So let's not go down a Connor Williams road again. So let's talk players that you are still zeroing in on that you think can help this team. The Seahawks have cap space. They still have a few areas that they could add a veteran that it would be helpful. Who are a few players that jump out to you on this free agent market that you think could have the greatest impact on helping this Seahawks team improve from 10 wins a year ago?
Well, we'll start with the offensive line because I felt obligated to at least have one offensive lineman in there. David Andrews was a guy I was kind of keen on until a couple weeks ago. Shaq Mason, the guard, he was part of that offensive line that really rejuvenated the Texans a couple seasons ago with C.J. Stroud. And the right guard spot with the Seahawks right now very much in flux. Christian Haynes, I think we both can agree, has maybe a bit of an inside step in taking that role. And one of the cons to Shaq Mason, of course, is if you look at the Pro Football Focus numbers, he actually had a year comparable to Laken Tomlinson last year. Unfortunately, the Texans, as we all know, took a step back a little bit last year, and Mason did take that with them. But the track record is there more so than it is for Tomlinson, so that's where I'll push back. He's not that far removed from some really good years in New England, and you could probably get him for $7 million or under, and provide some veteran stability. Is he going to be a Pro Bowler? Probably not, but is he going to be better than Christian Haynes right off the bat? Maybe. And I think that the Seahawks probably could use a bit more veteran, juice in the locker room as in the interior offensive line. And then sticking to the trenches for my second one, Zadarius Smith is a guy I've always respected. I always have loved watching Zadarius Smith. He's been a lot of fun to watch pass rushing in the NFC North for most of his career. 3-time Pro Bowler, 3 double-digit sack seasons. You can pretty much pencil him in for 60 pressures, 8 sacks around there. He's a plug-and-play productive player. And yes, he'll be 33 years old. He's fought through some injuries the last couple of years, even though he hasn't missed a ton of games. He hasn't been, at full strength. Maybe you can get him for under $6 million. Be really nice to add a veteran piece and kind of, like we talked about with the Uchenna Nwosu. Boy, if you can throw a healthy Uchenna Nwosu with Darius Smith, with Dexter Lawrence, DeMarcus. I keep calling him Dexter Lawrence. My gosh, DeMarcus Lawrence.
It'd be nice to have Dexter Lawrence.
It would be nice to have Dexter. And it just having that entire defensive line kind of filled out like that, and sprinkle in youth with productive veteran. Zadarius Smith is really an attractive one to me. Then lastly, even though we kind of can agree the cornerback spot maybe isn't a fire drill like it maybe was pre-minicamp and OTAs, there's some pieces kind of maybe solidifying a little bit. But Kendall Fuller, another veteran, tons of experience. He's bounced around the league, but also bounced around between slot and boundary corner. He can play both. Playoff and Super Bowl experience, solid tackler in space. Yes, the age versus price point might be a question mark. Kind of dropped off a cliff last year coverage-wise towards the end. Did he run out of gas? Maybe not healthy. But can he man the boundary to free up Witherspoon and be a partner to Reek Woolen along the side and provide depth with Josh Jobe and Nehemiah Pritchett? Get him maybe $8 million or under and bring another solidified. And he's probably a guy of these three. I'd say maybe Kendall Fuller probably has the most left in the tank as far as solid play. 3 proven productive veterans, for the Seahawks to take a look at with about $30 million in cap space.
Yeah, and everybody who has been listening to Locked On Seahawks for the last 3 months, you know how much I have been pushing for Jadeveon Clowney. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. But of course, he's going to be on my list with his connection to Mike Macdonald, how well he played in this same scheme 2 years ago. And I mentioned Uchenna Nwosu and his importance to this football team in our power rankings in the opening segment. But you have to be prepared for the possibility that he could open the season on the PUP list. I don't think it's going to happen, but this is a guy that's just had so many issues staying healthy. And I think the Seahawks just want to hope that can we get him to a point where he is 100% and then we can keep him on the field. So I think adding a 5th defensive end or outside linebacker is going to be something that's going to be imperative to this team, because I just don't know. if you are going to be ready to move forward with somebody like a Tyreek Smith, or if any of these undrafted rookies, are you going to want those guys to be on your roster in week one? I think Clowney immediately gives you another guy that can stuff the run. He's going to have some positional flexibility. He had good pass rushing production in Mike Macdonald's defense, and you don't have to count on him to be a starter at this stage. What a luxury it'd be to have him rotating in as like your fourth or fifth guy on the outside. So again, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Clowney because I have talked about him ad nauseum, and I'm still predicting he's in a Seahawks uniform. I think this is a guy that absolutely would be a great fit to bring back. And I think Mike Macdonald loves the way that he fits into the defense. Let's talk a couple of other players, though, here real quick that would make some sense to me that are still on the market. At the cornerback position, Rasul Douglas has visited with the Seahawks. So this is not throwing his name out of left field. They've already shown interest. And some may wonder why him over Shaquille Griffin. The big reason why Douglas has played a lot more inside and he's played some safety. At this point, I don't think the Seahawks need another player that's strictly a boundary corner. I think they need a guy that has that positional versatility and flexibility. Rasul Douglas can play a number of different positions, and he, quite frankly, has way more ball production than what Shaquille Griffin did. Now, Griffin's gotten his hands on a lot of pass breakups. Douglas, though, has been a guy that's consistently been in the hunt to lead the league in interceptions for corners. So I just think that he fits what Seattle wants from a indispensability in terms of position-wise and ball hawking. He's got all those things working for him. And the last guy on my list here, I kind of touched on this. I believe it was on Wednesday's episode. Amari Cooper is still out there as a free agent. And I don't think that he's the player he was 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not going to sit here and say that Amari Cooper is a 1,000-yard receiver. I think that time has come and gone. But I think he still has value. I still think he's a guy that can do some damage, especially if he was your third receiver. I mean, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is your number 4, or Torrey Horton is your 4. Like, you're suddenly looking at a lot of fun possibilities there, because I still think Amari Cooper can get open with the best of them. He's a really good route runner who is sneaky good at getting downfield and finding a way to create some big plays. He's not the most explosive receiver, but he's been reliable in his career, and he hasn't had great quarterbacks at times. It's been hit and miss for him who's been throwing the ball to him. Definitely when he was in Cleveland, did not have the benefit of great quarterbacks. I think Sam Darnold would like to have that target, and I just think Cooper, he fits the mold of being a guy that's got a little different skill set compared to Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith and Jigba, that you can have a lot of different options. He can be a possession target. So I'm not predicting that this happens, but I would not be surprised at all if Amari Cooper ends up getting in a Seahawks uniform, because he is yet to sign. And I still think that he's got some good football left in him. He's not an elite receiver anymore, but a guy that can certainly help this football team. And I think the Seahawks, they're in a position where, you know, if it doesn't work out, you can move on. I don't think you're going to have to spend a ton of money to sign him at this stage in his career, but I think that he's a veteran presence, a good locker room guy. I think it would make sense for the Seahawks to at least kick the tires there and look into possibly pairing him with the receiving core that they currently have. When we come back, it's bubble watch time. We've got 5 pairings of players who are very much on the fringe, whether they're going to be on the roster come September. We are going to be discussing and debating, and I think you and I are going to have some very different opinions on a few of these. That'll be coming up next year on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Welcome back to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, Blue Friday edition. I'm Corbin Smith, glad to be joined, as always, on our Blue Friday show by my co-host, Nick Lee, and a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support. We've got a while till training camp opens, but that doesn't mean we can't explore potential bubble situations on the Seahawks roster now that the offseason program is in the books. We are going to play Bubble Watch, and this is one of our favorite games to sprinkle in this time of year. Nick, I've got 5 pairs of players, and you and I have to decide which one is most likely to be on the roster week 1 against the San Francisco 49ers. So let's kick it off here. Our first one here on Bubble Watch, and this is the one I'm really fascinated to see the discussion, because I think you can make some compelling arguments on both sides of the coin. And again, this is under the impression that both these players, you could only keep one of them. Bubble Watch, who makes the 53 rookie running back Damian Martinez or second year tackle, Mike Jarrell?
Well, this was tough because if you want to go with who plays the premium position, you go with Jarrell because you could argue, your swing tackle is probably more valuable than your possible fourth string running back. But the talent level versus who he's up against on the depth chart wise, I think I'm going to go Damian Martinez here. Not sure how big the gap is between him. There is a gap between him and Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet and Kenny McIntosh. Maybe not even between him and Kenny McIntosh, but it's not a giant gap. It's maybe, a little creek in your backyard you can hop across with a few stones. It's not some large, canal. It's not that huge. I mean, we're talking about a guy who between the last 2 seasons of college football was one of the more productive running backs in all of college football for 2 different programs, Oregon State and Miami. And also Martinez is a guy where probably not going to sneak him on a practice squad. And if someone else picks him up, he's a guy that I could see, unfortunately, maybe not directly hurting the Seahawks like he's beating them, but a guy who starts to produce late in the year. Like, man, if only we didn't get rid of Damian Martinez. Ken Walker's down, Zach Charbonnet's banged up. All of a sudden, it's Kenny McIntosh and nothing else. And if only we would have kept Damian Martinez. So I'm going to go Damian Martinez just for the talent level versus what's in the room. And I think that Mike Jarrell, there's a few things working against him, but with Martinez's production in college and what his upside could be, you could talk me into him, being getting significant snaps at running back, maybe even as late as late this year, early next year, depending on what happens with the running back room. But I'm not sure he's that far off from getting significant snaps in this offense.
This one was really tricky for me because my last 2 53-man roster projections, I had both these guys on the team. But based on this exercise, I could only keep one of them. And you do have to look at which position you are more likely to slip somebody through to practice squad. And look, I think Damian Martinez is a really talented player. But if I was in this situation and I was John Schneider in the front office, Mike Jarrell is a 90th percentile athlete at the tackle position who showed some promise when he was forced into action last year. I don't think he's a starter. I mean, you've got 2 really good starters there, but I think that Mike Jarrell, it would be a much riskier option to try to sneak him to a practice squad, especially because of the shortage, the scarcity of offensive linemen in the league right now. I think you'd have several teams put in claims on him. Damian Martinez, maybe he would get plucked up, but running back, just think about how deep this class was. I don't know that teams are going to be rushing to try to claim him. Now, this would change if you have a bunch of injuries around the league, because then you're like, well, wait a second. Now that running back might be much more valuable in the waiver wire. So I think there's some fluidity to this, but I'm actually going to go with Mike Jarrell just because tackles are so much harder to find than running backs. And Seattle's got a lot of talent there. So there's a lot of variables to consider here. In real life, I would not want to get rid of either one of them, but that's not the exercise that we have here. So I'm going to go with Mike Jarrell. Our second one, Bubble Watch, Patrick O'Connell, the linebacker, or Jarek Reed, the safety.
So obviously we're probably talking, special teams mostly between these two. Reed has already made a pretty significant impact on special teams, 9 special teams tackles, I think, total in his career so far. Patrick O'Connell hasn't quite notched the stats on special teams so far, but he's made contributions. And I'd say at this point, depth wise between inside line or off ball linebacker and safety, I'm not sure that the depth rating or quality is far off between these two. They both have pretty good top, but it maybe starts to drop off after that. And for me, this was probably one of the harder ones. And also, I'm going to take Jarek Reed just because I don't think it's also, I kind of did a 2-layer here because I don't think it's necessarily Jarek Reed versus D'Anthony Bell. I don't think that's a black and white thing either. I think they can coexist in a world. Because D'Anthony Bell, like you've mentioned, watching some OTAs and mini camps, D'Anthony Bell's had a pretty good offseason and summer program with Seattle. But I'm going to go Jarek Reed just for he's been a bit more productive in special teams. And I do wonder what the safety depth is after like the top three guys. And he's got some experience back there. So by a hair, I'm going to go Reed.
This one, I could go either way. I think that both these guys are good special teams players. I do think the depth at linebacker, I think it presents a better opportunity for Patrick O'Connell to stay on this roster. But I'm going to go with Jarek Reed. If I had to pick between the two, I'm fine with keeping 5 safeties on the roster because Nick Emanwari can be like a linebacker. And DeAnthony Bell is 6'2", 209. I mean, they've got some bigger safeties that can play in the box some. And Jarek Reed has been, when healthy, he has been one of this team's very best special teams players that isn't a kicker or punter. He really knows how to go down the field and make plays on coverage teams, and he's just a physical guy. And I still think there's some potential there as a free safety. He's not going to see the field for this team unless there's injuries. But I just think that there's more upside for him than Patrick O'Connell. I'm willing to go roll the dice, another one of the linebackers that I have if I have to pick between these two. Our next one, this is the one that I might be most torn on. It is, who makes the 53? Ricky White, the 7th rounder out of UNLV, or second-year cornerback Nehemiah Pritchett?
Well, I mean, if we're talking who's closer to getting significant snaps on offense or defense versus just special teams, I think it is Pritchett. He got his feet wet on defense last year a little bit. He's come on strong, as you've observed in OTAs, minicamp this summer, or this spring and summer, I should say. And maybe that's going to help with the cornerback room a little bit. And he's been a solid special teamer. Man, Ricky White, I mean, we're talking about the Mountain West Conference Special Teams Player of the Year. 4 blocked punts. Are you kidding me? And he can also return. I mean, you can back me into a corner and make me say he's their current best special teams player right now. I mean, just from a pure talent and, possible, jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife kind of special teamer. It's going to be really hard for me to get to see Ricky White walk out the door if that ends up happening, just because of just the sheer will and tenacity and finesse and just technique that he has in special teams. It's hard to find. Even if he doesn't catch a pass this year as a receiver, he could make a huge impact with what he looked like at UNLV.
Yeah, I think this one is an exercise of torture. That's the way that I look at it, because
I'm picking White, by the way, for record.
Yeah. Common sense would say, look, right now with the way the cornerback room is, like, if you release Nehemiah Pritchett, like, you're already in a depth position that is concerning in terms of your boundary guys, and he's a 4-3 guy. He's more athletic. But man, Ricky White, I mean, we haven't got to see a lot of the things that I think are going to make him stand out until the pads come out. You won't see him just because the special teams, you don't really get a taste of what's going to look like. And I still think that he's a guy that could sneak up and catch a few passes on offense too. So again, my last 53, I had both these guys in the roster. I'd rather keep Ricky White the 3rd and then go see if I can find one of those veterans we talked about. Maybe Rasul Douglas can come in. So maybe I'm cheating here with this, but I'm going to go with Ricky White the 3rd as well, because I think he has way too much talent all around with what he can. He's a better special teams player, in my opinion, than Nehemiah Pritchett by a pretty wide margin. And I think there may be room for him to contribute on offense at some point, maybe even this year for the Seahawks. Bubble watch. Eric Saubert, the veteran tight end, or Josh Ross, the veteran linebacker. This one, Nick, is truly a bottom of the roster. Who is better on special teams for this team?
Yeah, if we're talking, strictly who we would take in a special team scenario, I'm probably taking Ross. Seven special teams tackles last year. If we're considering it all, what they might look like as far as their roles on the respective offense or defense, Saubert could, contribute to the just battering ram they could have in the offensive line and, with tight ends and running the ball. But if we're talking about what they could truly contribute with special teams, I'm probably going to go Ross. He had a fairly productive last year, and I think that can continue this year. So just really quickly, I'll go Ross.
Yeah, this is one this is the first time I can say this. We have 2 guys that I didn't have on Seattle's 53, the last projection that I had. And I think Seattle could keep 4 tight ends potentially just because of the type of offense that you're going to be running with Clint Kubiak. But I'm going to go with Ross here just because of the linebacker position having depth concerns potentially. He's been a really good special teams guy, and he has played both in college and the NFL for Mike Macdonald. So to me, this one could go either way. It depends on what you're going to be valuing personnel-wise on offense and defense, but I'll go with Ross on this one. And the last one, 2 players that are working on adjusting to new positions. Who makes the 53? Fullback Brady Russell or hybrid linebacker Jamie Sheriff?
Yeah, these are 2 guys that are truly like the bubbliest of bubbles. With
Champagne, anyone?
Yeah. with Brady Russell and fullback, I think it's Robbie Oates' season at fullback. It just like I said, I think he looks like Jack Reacher. If you're a Reacher fan of the show, Oates just looks the part, and I don't see them just truly carrying 2 fullbacks like that. So I think that kind of puts Russell in a bad spot, unless there's, God forbid, a run of injuries in tight end. Then you got to throw him maybe back in there. And Jamie Sheriff, I think he was probably the defensive MVP of the preseason last year. Made some really nice plays. And he's playing, in my opinion, a bit more of and this might break your heart, Corbin, playing a bit more of a premium position as far as, pass rusher, edge rusher. So I want to see what he looks like in a bit of a different role this preseason, which would be a lot of fun. So picking one, the tiebreaker for me is I'm favoring Robbie Oates over Brady Russell, and Jamie Sheriff is in a more premium position as a pass rusher.
Yeah, this is another one that I could, Brady Russell's such a good special teams player that you could justify keeping him as a 4th tight end, I think. The issue I have here, though, is when I look at the position groups, we talked about that 5th edge spot that Seattle has, where there really is a massive crevasse between the first 4 players and who else is on the depth chart. And I think Jamie shared the fact that he is over 255 pounds. He's got a little bit more size, but he's a guy that's been working some at off ball. He's played some special teams. I think that his pathway to playing, though, is still that edge position. And I just think there's more of an opportunity on the roster right now for him. So I'm going to go with Jamie Sheriff for these 2 because I agree with you. I think Robbie Oates, I think he's won the fullback job already personally. I cannot wait to see that guy with pads on. It's going to be a lot of fun. And it's not a shot at Brady Russell. I think he's a really good special teams player. But if they're wanting to set the tone identity-wise with a physical offense, Robbie Oates is going to be that guy. And I think Jamie Sheriff, he's got, I wouldn't say an inside track, but he's got a better shot at getting that last edge spot on the roster than what Brady Russell currently has at the 2 positions that he would be able to play away from special teams. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Nick at Nick Lee 51. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. When we come back tomorrow, yes, there's going to be a Saturday episode. I'm going to be taking a deeper dive into Abe Lucas and how important he has been for this Seahawks offense in his first 3 seasons. And going to be taking a look at where Devin Witherspoon can really make the next big jump entering year 3 in a Seahawks uniform. Make sure you're listening in and enjoy the rest of your Friday night. Go Hawks.